It doesn't matter how much money went into the account. What matters is, did you make a difference in somebody's life? And if you make enough of a difference in people's lives, everything else falls into place.
Welcome to the Unstoppables. Yes, this is the place. You're at the right place, the right station, the right time, where we turn those intentions. You know, thoughts are something, it's just really a fantasy unless they're turned into reality. On this show, we're going to show you how to turn those thoughts of yours into a productive reality. I can think of no one better to be on this show with me today than Dr. Nicholas Nikolov. And I hope I got that right, did I?
That was close enough.
We'll keep trying until we get it. But he is a top, and I mean a top, plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, California. Now they say in New York, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. But think about this. Beverly Hills, plastic surgery, if you can get in there, you got to be really, really good. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We talked a little bit in the green room about where you came from, how you started, the whole why of what you do. So I want to go back. I want to give you the mic now. It's hard for me to relinquish it, but I want to give you the mic. Tell me a little bit about your background. 15 years old, where you came from, and what happened.
When I was 15, well, I was born in Bulgaria. So when I was 15, we managed to leave the country. We defected, going through Italy, refugee camp, all of that, and ended up in New York. So I started high school in a city school in New York City, public school, not knowing a single soul, and not knowing a word of English.
That had to be the first barrier. You know, on this show, we talk about people overcoming obstacles. That's got to be a formidable obstacle. You can't navigate the language.
To me, everything is attitude. And if you look at it in a positive way, this is a positive experience. I never thought of it, oh my God, I don't know English. What am I going to do? I always thought of it as, well, I'm here. This is a great opportunity for me. I'm learning English. I'm doing all these wonderful things. And what a treat. I mean, this is great. So if you take it in a positive light, it's no longer this doom hanging over you. It's a joy to progress and to feel like you're going somewhere and doing the things you want to do.
In human nature is meant to progress. And when we don't, when we stop and we try to stay in this form of stasis, we atrophy. And what you're talking about is a whole mindset, an attitude that says, this is a quest, this is something new, this is something that I'm going to embrace as something that's a challenge, instead of saying, oh, that's an insurmountable hurdle that it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get over. How long did it take you to have a passable,
Well, it's interesting you'd ask that because my wife always kids me about this. But my first semester at school, keep in mind, I started literally knowing, hi, how are you? And that was it. So the first semester, I made the honors roll.
First semester?
First semester. However, that meant I took a lot of science and, of course, very little English. I used to speak German, so I took German. Of course, everybody was learning German. I was learning the English side, so the translation for me and the learning process was on the English side, not on the German side. So that was kind of an opportunity to learn English as well.
There are breakthrough moments that really make a career and contribute to a life. One of your breakthrough moments was college. So tell me what you thought about school. I think it was one of your parents or both of your parents said, well, you're going to go almost like a fait accompli to college, right? And I think that's where we start.
Well, everybody is going to college. I've always been pretty successful at school, so of course I was going to go to college. Everybody else is doing it. And nobody was ever complaining that college wasn't fun. So I started college, and of course, the first question they ask is, well, what's your major? I have no idea. What do you really want to be? I have no idea. I literally had just come to the U.S. and had been in the U.S. for a year and a half. So I was just getting my feel for how things work, what opportunities are there. And also I happened to be younger than most that was starting college.
How old are you?
Well, I started college. I turned 17 in college, so I was a little younger.
A little bit. Yeah, about 21.
So when I started school and they wanted to know what I would do, they said, well, you're good in sciences. Why don't you be pre-med? And that's how I kind of looked into medicine as a whole. I have no one in my family that's in medicine, and it would not have even crossed my mind.
You went to the University of Louisville, correct?
Right.
And then you went on to, was it?
I finished, after finishing, I also stayed there for medical school, which happens to be a wonderful medical school, and I'm very grateful to have had that opportunity. Then I finished general surgery training at University of Virginia, and I finished plastic surgery training at Duke.
Now, we talked about this. We talked about there's something before plastic surgery. Tell me some of what other surgeries you performed, what other specialties you had before you had this epiphany, or when we'll get into this, before you decided plastic surgery is the route. Tell me some of the other stuff you've done. It's fascinating.
I like excitement, and excitement not in a chaotic way, in a controlled way, but still, I like where you're able to create, you do things. The outcome is not always known, but you want to make sure that you control it as much as you can, but it also involves your creative side. You think on your feet. So, of course, cardiovascular surgery is a perfect opportunity. You clamp the aorta and you replace it, and time is of the essence, and you can't have a leak. You stop the heart and you have to restart it. So I had such a great fascination. I did a lot of surgeries. All my friends were in that field, so I loved it. So that is one of the things I truly enjoyed doing. Also, trauma was the same thing. I love trauma because you didn't get a second chance. You got it right or you didn't. And it was important to be on every time. But sitting, thinking about it, there was a certain draw to plastic surgery that I had never explored, at least not officially doing rotations through it. But doing some soul searching, I realized that there was that same creativity in a more subtle way, but it probably even much more of a creative process, being able to change people's lives and give them just as much as really doing a cardiac bypass.
You've got to walk me through this. You got in a car and drove for how long?
2 days.
And you were looking for?
I had applications out for cardiovascular surgery and plastic surgery for training. And I wasn't sure. I was very torn. I believe in kind of figuring out, if you give yourself a chance, deep inside, you know what the right answer is. You just have to get through the noise. Mm-hmm. And I just drove for 2 days by myself, stopped at little inns, having lunch, dinner, solely just soul-searching trip. And by the time I got back, I knew what I wanted to do. And it ended up being plastic surgery.
And that's great advice for people today. It's at any day, at any stage and age. But it's great advice because it's hard for us to just be. It's hard for us to just be and to think and to feel and to be away from the noise, to be away from our phones, and to be away from what we think we need to be or have to be for society, as opposed to what we really want to be. And that's for ourselves. The adrenaline rush that you're describing, actually sound like you're working on a car when you were doing some of the cardio. But the adrenaline rush that you were talking about in cardio and trauma, boom, 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 let's go, 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 go. It seems antithetical. It seems to be the opposite to what plastic surgery would be when you have the time to create and to mold and to use. You have more. How do I want to say this? It's almost like you're in a relaxed state of creativity as opposed to that controlled chaos that is the operating room in cardio. How did you make that switch?
It's not a switch because the creative process satisfies enough in me that I'm quite happy being in that Zen zone and be able to create something that I feel I can feel good about, something that, and we're getting in a whole different area here, something that the patient can feel good about because it's meeting of the minds. It's two people connecting for a common goal. I have to feel and I have to know what they're thinking, what makes them happy. So being able to get in their head and to be able to almost channel that and create what they see and they want, as well as what I see for them, I think that is immensely gratifying. And it's a big responsibility, but also when you're able to accomplish it, you become almost one with your patient.
Responsibility is honesty as well. How many people have you pushed away, said no?
I wouldn't say I push people away. I try to be honest with what's realistic. And they have to live with the outcome. So it's important to respect their wishes. However, if their wishes are outside of my comfort zone, I don't feel I can create something that I don't believe in. And there is a certain area where you just don't feel it's the right thing. It doesn't mean it's wrong morally. It doesn't mean it's horrible. I just have to be able to share that vision with them.
If others in your field had that same philosophy and followed it, you probably wouldn't be living in Beverly Hills as you do now, because you're doing a lot of revisions. And revisions are work that somebody else, to some degree, came up a little bit short of expectations, correct?
By definition, yes.
I'm trying to be,
and
trying to be nice.
And just for the record, I think most doctors and most surgeons try their best. And they really try to do what they think is right. They try to create the best they can. And it's just because it's a revision, it does not always mean that's something wrong or they didn't care or they just were not capable.
And it could be that whole body dysmorphia thing kicking in where people think I could just get better. Slippery slope between good and perfect. You'll never get perfect. We can only be good. It's the same in business. It's different.
More is better, right?
Yeah, that's the American way.
So,
it's the American way.
And that's when you get in trouble.
Well, people recognize your talent. You've been doing this now for 20 years as a plastic surgeon, correct?
A little over that, but I'm starting to de-emphasize the numbers because then it shows my age.
You want to stay? No, ageless, timeless. But apparently the networks love you because you've been on CNN, CBS, NBC, and Discovery Health, and you're going to be on something I can't talk about in the near future that's going to be pretty big. But they pull you for your expertise, and you're a natural on television. You love that camera, don't you?
Well, actually, believe it or not, I don't think they have me for my charm. So hopefully my expertise are good enough that it's something that contributes enough to a piece, and it makes it worthwhile.
We all have to define success in our own way. How do you define success?
For me, success, personally, is being able to do what you want to do, doing it the way you want to do it, and be very passionate about it. It's not about Are you financially successful? The more important part is, does it soothe the soul? Do you feel good about what you do? Do you go home and you have a warm feeling that you've done something positive and you feel good about yourself and making a difference? Or do you go home and you feel unsettled? It doesn't matter how much money went into the account. What matters is, did you make a difference in somebody's life? And if you make enough of a difference in people's lives, everything else falls into place. If you worry about marketing, if you worry about all the numbers, you lose sight of what's truly important, and it's much harder to really feel gratification from what you do. And as a result, at least for me, it'd be much harder to be successful. I have to feel like I'm excited every day when I go in, and I look forward to it, and it's like, I get to do this. I was at a wedding this last weekend, and somebody came up to me that I know that's also a patient, and she said, I have to tell you, the best thing I love about your office is when I come in, everybody's happy, they feel like they want me there, they're excited about seeing me, you're excited about talking about this, whether we do something or not. Most offices that I go to, the first thing I hear is, oh, medicine is so bad. We're never making this. We have to deal with this. It's such a negative attitude. And in your office, I feel uplifted. And for me, that was the biggest compliment I could have gotten.
You must have someone great that has a high degree of selectivity in hiring, because you're hiring people with a yes bias that come from a positive place. And
that I do, and I'm very thankful to have great staff. However, I think leadership comes from the top, and not that I want to take credit for everything, but I think if you go in with a positive attitude and you show people that what we're doing as an office is a wonderful thing, and we're here to make people feel better, to treat them medically, but also to make them feel comfortable. If you go in with that attitude, it rubs off on everyone else. And everybody tends to fall into place, and people kind of mirror who's around them.
I'm going to draw back on this passion. The etymological root of passion is suffering. We talked about this the other day. So if people say passion, passion, they're really talking about suffering. Suffering to a degree, and it may not be suffering, is in the work. To do what you do, to do what we do, you've got to do the work. There's no shortcuts. And that's one of the biggest things we have on Instagram, Facebook, is people are looking for that 4-hour body, for that 4-hour way of life, that they can make more by doing less. What would you say to that?
I think you're absolutely right.
Just click right there. We just stopped. We're done with the interview.
Well, you haven't heard that a few shows, I'm sure. No, I couldn't agree with you more. For me, I'm going through a long surgery, and here's just like one small thing. It's not quite perfect, and you've operated for 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6, and you can be out having lunch. At the same time, something isn't quite right. Maybe even the patient won't even notice. However, do you go in and fix it or not? And one thing is, the minute you start thinking it's even a choice,
Right.
you've lost.
Right.
It's not a choice. You have to do what is absolutely best for the patient. And again, not to get on a high horse, oh, it's for the patient. Whatever you do, you have to do your absolute best, and not just, oh, that's good enough, nobody would know.
Well, the key is, and we are very, very, very similar in that way, because what I coach here is to take the money out of the equation. Because usually ethics go with or commensurate with the size of the commissions or the monetary reward. Sometimes they get a little slippery, but not here. You do what's right for that person every time, and you're the person that has to go home and look in that mirror and be able to live with yourself. You know, it was Adam Smith who was the father of modern economics, who had this little impartial observer he imagined on his shoulder. So if he thought about stealing the newspaper next door, even though it would really cause no harm except to the neighbor who'd probably be inconvenienced, didn't do it. And I think that's the part of that inner value system you have, the inner value system that is in balance because it's congruent with what you truly are and truly believe. It comes forth. So that's my compliment to you. Not that you need any more, considering this litany of achievements you have.
Well, the one person you can lie to is yourself.
Oh,
You can lie to everybody else, but deep inside, no matter what you mask things with, you can't lie to yourself. And if you are deep inside, you know it, and there's no way you can feel good about yourself, and there's no way you can find happiness.
I used to do this piece in one of my talks, and I stopped doing it because it was kind of a downer. But I said, when you look in the mirror, you've got 2D batteries, and you have to overcome those. That's denial and delusion. And the first place it occurs is of the self. Because many people spin the narrative, spin these tales, spin the lies that they tend to believe, and they lose, and they really start to believe that lie or that way, and that becomes them. That's the tough part. The tough part. Here's the question I want to ask you. This is an opinion, and this is just feel. Attitude, the way you come at life with an attitude. You think that's innate?
I think life forms your attitude. I think experiences have a lot to do with what your attitude would be. But some of it you're just born with a certain approach. And there's a personality that, yeah, you can change. However, I've seen my personality change over the years. A lot would argue for the better. And not necessarily am I a nice guy or not a nice. It's mostly how I approach things, how proactive I am, how aggressive in a positive, not a negative way. More proactive is probably a better choice of words. How proactive I am to solve problems or to address issues. And I think life teaches you just have to be willing to listen and to learn from those lessons.
I would add one thing. I think your attitude shapes how you view the environment, and that's how you engage in that environment. For some people, though, however, I have seen where the environment shapes their attitude. So they are a victim of the condition, a victim of a consequence, and most of it, obviously, is outside of their control. Those are victims. So I'm pretty tough on that. If you haven't noticed, I have my ways. Failure is, and I just wrote a book on failure. It's called Fail More. It's with a major publisher, McGraw-Hill. And the two sides of the same coin, success and failure, you can't have one. You can't have the former without experiencing the lessons, hopefully, that you've learned of the latter. So tell me in your life what you consider to be the biggest failure.
Oh, there's so many.
I thought you were going to say you couldn't find one.
No, it's, I'm someone who's actually motivated by failure. And I think what makes me successful is the failures I've had. You learn from it, and also a sure way of making sure I get something done is to have me fail at it the first time, even in a minute way, because the drive is that much stronger. If you look, and again, speaking in generalities, but if you look at most people that are successful in business, most of them have gone through a few bankruptcies. Mm-hmm. Most of them have had failed companies until they get to a successful one. It just, nothing stopped them. And you have to believe in your goal and not allow anything to get in the way. And for me, that's the important part.
You have to believe in your goal, and you have to have self-belief. And for me, it was a motivator because I never defined it as failure. I had thousands of them, setbacks. And they were setbacks. And maybe that's a euphemism for failure, but I never thought it was something that was final. So it was just something that was a process of learning, and that's part of the sacrifice that success requires. There's no other way around it. So you've had a lot. You can't tell me the one biggest one, huh? Besides agreeing to come on the show and driving 2 hours from Beverly Hills.
Well, that was a biggie because 2 hours on the freeway each way.
Oof.
That is about to.
Testing your attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, it did. It's like, okay, halfway through. Let's hope I make it on time. I really can't think of anything huge or mind-blowing. Simply because I think it's just a series of small things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that I can say define me. It's mainly stumbling blocks.
You just mentioned the next question. The letter of the next question begins with a D. What was your one defining moment that got you to this point?
Well, there's several there as well.
You're only getting one in this one.
I get one. Well, probably the defining moment, and I may get a little emotional on this one, was we had crossed the border into Italy from former Yugoslavia, obviously illegally, and I was 15. My dad was crossing, and he didn't make it across, so we didn't know what had happened to him. So we had to make a decision what to do. And I was 15, but I was the eldest. And my mother looks at me and says, okay, I don't know what to do. It's my husband. What do we do? Do we go on or do we go back? At 15, I had to make that decision. So for me, that was a defining moment. I had to decide, do I leave my father behind, not knowing what happened to him, and move on, or go back, which also carries a lot of consequences, negative consequences. So it's the day I grew up.
Well, that's a defining moment. That is a defining moment. Let me ask you about inspiration. You seem to just come out of the box with it. I'm just saying you came out of the womb, you were inspired, you had a great attitude. But what's been your biggest, greatest inspiration in life?
My mother. And she always plugged away. She was never after the glamour, but she always did what she needed to do, and she did it the right way. And I do have to throw in my father, because he was a dreamer in a good way. He never settled, and he always dreamed of doing what sometimes seemed impossible. However, he never settled. He tried to pursue it, and most of the time got there.
So you got a great mix, didn't you?
It was a great mix because they were very much opposite. But it was a good learning process growing up, because you had someone with high goals and you had someone that always did the work and did it well and did it the right way. And I think life is about the mix of both.
Yes, it is.
At least for me it is.
I would agree with that as well. I need my naysayers, and I need the people, not so much naysayers, but people to give me a balance. The things that I can't see in my rear view mirror, I need someone to point them out to me, because I can't see those things. I can't see them all. So I need to be told when I'm full of, when I'm not, and I have to be able to take it well. I've learned that. Humility, it's called. So where can we find you? Give me the website and tell me where we can tune in to find you, because you're fascinating. Your story is fascinating, but tell me where we find you.
The website is Dr. Nikolov, that would be DrNikolov.com. And that's the best place to find me. I'm in Beverly Hills, right in the middle in the triangle on Bedford. And if anybody has any questions, certainly they can reach out. I don't, as you can tell, I'm not always comfortable with self-promotion. And for me, life is not about that. So,
Nikolov.
right.
There it is. Nikolov. I said Nikolov.
Don't feel bad.
I do.
My wife mispronounces it, and my kids mispronounce it.
Nikolov.
And they have the name. So that's why
Can
Nikolov is just fine.
you see that I am beating myself up? The self-flagellation, the whips are occurring. I'm just having, I think I'm getting an ulcer over it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Well, you were practicing.
If you were going to write a paragraph, you'd actually should start writing some books. Have you written a book yet?
I'm in the process of writing something, yes.
No, the story would be great. But if you were going to write one paragraph for other people, your family, for other people to learn from, the things that you would write to make a difference in their lives in that one paragraph, what would you write about? What would you advise them to do?
Be passionate. Be true to yourself. Believe in what you want to do. Stop at no cost, but do it the right way.
Beautiful.
Don't sell your soul.
No, that's called the Faustian bargain. It didn't work out. Well, it worked out okay in the books, but you don't want to sell your soul. And that's the thing we teach here as well. You know, there's going to be a point where your soul is going to be up for barter. There's going to be that devil that comes for your soul. Do not give away your soul. That's the one thing you can't get back, and it's like self-respect. You know, no one's going to respect you until you respect yourself. And the only thing you give away is self-respect. You have to keep your self-respect. So you're right on with me on that.
And the other thing, if I may add, which for me I think it's worked well, but it's something I use all the time. Judge yourself on what you do and how you do it. Don't worry about the outcome. The outcome is not always based on what you did, and if you did the right thing at the time, there are other factors. Feel good if you did it the right way.
So you're talking about the integrity of the process, because you can do you can do everything correctly. Things that are outside your control, and I would argue with you philosophically that many things are, if not most things, that all you do is influence those things. And those things that are way outside your span of influence could occur even if you adhere to a process of integrity. But if you're great with the process overall, those things will start to click as wins. And those are the other variables you'll learn from. Could be people change their mind. People just don't like the way you look. But if you stay with the process, hold to the integrity of the process, and keep your own and don't lose your soul, I think you might be onto something. Don't have a talent to be a plastic surgeon, but I think I have that part down.
Well, it's
I don't have any skill.
well, certainly you're much better at toasting than I would be. So.
No. I want to keep you here for a little bit longer. You drove a long way. Tell me what the most satisfying type of surgery for you is. And I know it's make a difference, the bounce from the person coming to you saying, this is great, but where do you get that, I've really made that difference? And you don't have to, you wouldn't name names, but just tell me about it.
It's someone coming in and smiling. And you just know they're happy. I had, just to use an example, and this is an extreme example, but one of the local papers actually had an article on that patient. I did not initiate it. The patient or his family initiated it, surprisingly enough. But it's a kid. Excuse me.
Sure.
It's a high school student, 17, that happened to have probably one of the biggest noses I've seen ever, and very shy, withdrawn, comes in with his mother. He wouldn't even speak for himself, to the point that I almost started feeling uncomfortable whether I should operate on him, because I couldn't get a feel for him at all. So I did his surgery. He comes in a month later. Actually a month and a half. I had seen him before several times, but at a month and a half, he's grinning from year to year. And I'm like, this is not, I almost didn't recognize him. He was like the happiest person on earth. And that he wasn't even close to that before. And his mother comes and hugs me, and it's like, I have to thank you. This has been so great. It's like, okay, I did a good job on the nose, but this is really a over-the-top response. And then she proceeds to tell me he was very withdrawn. School, he wasn't doing well. All of a sudden, just in a month and a half, he's doing better in school. He went out and got his driver's license within that month and a half. He got a job, part-time job, and now he has a girlfriend, the first girlfriend he's ever had.
Made a huge difference.
So all of a sudden, you could talk to him and you see the personality come out. You could carry a conversation with him, and you could tell he was just bubbling over. He was so excited about life. And that was such an extreme difference that to this day, I think about it, I can't believe it.
It's a gift of self-esteem. And the most important thing in any type of engagement with other people is confidence. It comes from self-esteem. And you've given him that level of self-esteem to open his world up to a whole new dimension, just the world in general, to those dimensions that now they can feel as confidence that comes from that self-esteem. Confidence is the key. Before they ever will stick around to know what your substance is, they're going to measure your confidence first. That's just the nature of humans and how we buy things or assess people and judge people.
But to be able to give that to someone.
It's awesome.
How can you beat that?
I don't know how we can beat this interview. This is a great one. So I mean, at least I think so. How do you think we did? Okay.
You did great. I'm sure I stumbled many times, but
no, you were fantastic. You have a great admixture of both empathy and intellect, which is killer combination because you have an emotional bandwidth that relates to others with a high degree of empathy, but you also have the intellectual and the skill to do what you have to do at the very highest level. And I think that's why you're the top Beverly Hills plastic surgeon. You won't say it, but people in New York call me and tell me that you really are. And they wouldn't lie to me.
Well, I may have to stay on the show much longer with this.
You're going to take the show over. But you have been a fascinating guest and fascinating, and there's so many great key points to your life. And I don't want the listener or the viewer to forget about where you came from. You know, coming from the background in that border cross from a foreign country, not knowing the language and overcoming the most formidable obstacles I could think of. Mine were, I think Kelsey wanted me to talk about my travels and trips. That's nothing. That's like just a walk in the park compared to what you have overcome. And it's, I think in part, sir, because you got such a great attitude and mindset and belief in the possible. That's my feeling. I'm Bill Wooditch. This is the Unstoppables. Dr. Nikolov, one of my favorite guests. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.